The policy workshop for August 27th will start, and I'm going to hand it over to Superintendent Van Ayers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So board members, this is our second policy workshop, our second cycle this year. So we both have board member policy and staff. So like all workshops, I look forward to the discussion today so we can move some of these policies to the next step. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, Madam Chair, and board members. As the superintendent said, there are several board member initiated policies and some staff policies. We'll go through the board member policies first. The three board member policies are exceptional student education, brought by member Perez, fiscal planning, brought by member Hahn, and then apprentices. Apprenticeship needs a little explanation, which I'll get to when we get to that one. It's not really being brought by Ms. Perez, it's being brought by staff, but it was originally brought by her. So the first policy is the ESE policy, suggested by member Perez, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Whalen, who will sort of go through what the policies.
Yeah, they brought it to the offices yesterday, or at least.
Would you what?
Can we get copies of that then?
But then let's move on to while we're waiting on that, we'll move on to fiscal planning. So if this is policy, this is an existing policy, 6210. So if you turn to your tabs, you will see that. Let's see. So this involves, the policy proposed involves the, with technically, or as laymen call the fund balance, although it's a little more technical than that. This is being brought by Dr. Hahn. Briefly, the current policy requires that there be at least a 3% of the projected general fund operating revenues for each fiscal year, and Dr. Hahn is proposing a 10% change, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Hahn if she wants to add anything for that.
Oh, I'm just hitting the ground running.
Let's go.
I can get it all straightened out. Thank you. So this has been something that I brought forward very thoughtfully, increasing the general fund balance to 10%. And I think it can be justified by several key factors, each aimed at enhancing the financial stability of the district, as well as supporting long-term planning and improving the district's ability to handle unforeseen expenses and challenges. So I just want to kind of go through my rationale, and many of you may, be aware of all this stuff, but, just for other people in the room and the public, I want to go through it in a little more detail. So there are a few points and key factors I want to hit on. The first one is enhancing financial stability. Making this increase, it creates a greater cushion against potential shortfalls, whether it be state funding or fluctuations in enrollment, which we've seen quite a bit of in the last few years, and then unexpected declines in local revenue sources, which we've also seen in the last few months. So this really can help us avoid some disruptive cuts that we would have had to have made if we didn't increase this in our leaner financial years. And so I'm trying to look ahead a little bit and be more proactive instead of reactive in bringing this forward. The other around enhanced financial stability is around bond ratings. Higher credit ratings reduce borrowing costs, especially for capital projects. And we know that we have a lot of capital projects coming up, and with everything with the CIT, this could help us keep our good bond rating and credit worthiness, ultimately saving taxpayer money. So that was the enhanced financial stability. The next factor is just preparations for emergencies. We live in Florida. We have hurricanes. It's unfortunate we're prone to natural disasters, and this just would ensure that, we have the necessary funds to address whether it be emergency repairs or, support displaced students and families. And we've all gone through COVID now. Hopefully we'll never have to go through something like that again. But again, we don't know what the future brings, and we need to be prepared. The next factor is supporting strategic initiatives. Investing in strategic initiatives that may require upfront costs, such as curriculum enhancements, technology upgrades, or staff development programs. And this higher fund balance would allow us to address some of that. And then flexibility in uncertain times, greater flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances, such as mandate shifts that may occur or educational priorities that we may want to invest in and move forward at a faster pace. The fourth factor for me was mitigating cash flow issues. And some of us on this board, we've probably all experienced this by now, but I know for Member Perez and Member Gray and myself, we had to face this during the first 4 years of my term. And, we sometimes face timing gaps between our expenditures and our revenue collection. And so this fund balance can help smooth out these cash flow issues. And if you recall, we at one time had to go out for a TAM because of that very issue. And, we'd like to avoid that because that interrupts, our employee pay schedule and so forth. And then we want to avoid that short-term borrowing. And again, to cover our operating expenses. And that's when we had to go out for the TAM at that time to cover that short term. We paid it back. But if we have a higher fund balance, we don't have to do that, and then that impacts our credit rating and so forth. So I'm kind of looking at the big picture. And then community and stakeholder confidence and best practices. So especially right now, I think the timing is appropriate. We've made a lot of promises to the community in the last few months around the referendum, around CIT, and we continue to fulfill our promises around the half-penny sales tax. And I think this is a really good opportunity to kind of walk the talk in showing that we are being really prudent fiscal managers. The idea that, building trust and support for our initiatives and the referendum, I think this really shows that we're being thoughtful, we're looking ahead, we're doing a lot of really thoughtful planning, and that we are ready for anything that we may encounter financially. So we're not being put into, a financial position where, we have to be taking risks. And so then the last thing really is around best practices. And I will just say that, many financial experts and educational organizations say that, the recommended fund balance is between 8% and 17%. So I think, having it increase to 10% really aligns with these best practices without going too far, but also covering ourselves in regard to all the things I just mentioned. I think it's a proactive measure. I think it enhances the district's financial health, and it really ensures preparedness for whether it be emergencies, long-term strategic goals of the school board or the superintendent, and ultimately benefiting the students and community. Thank you.
Member Gray, you're first in the queue.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. It's very important to observe the backdrop that many of us, maybe some in the audience, faced. In 2018, we had 2 weeks to go without being able to pay our employees. And the push for a referendum for delay maintenance had definitely been obvious with caving roofs from Plant High School and lack of air conditioning. So we've been in a very precarious place. Lessons learned. I believe that all what you said, Member Hahn, sorry, I have a little bit of, what is that called, delay, jet lag. Yeah, that's old age. Don't quote me on that, Marlene. But at any rate, the idea of locking a balance sheet, very, very important. The perception of our district still remains that we're not spending as frugally or as wisely as we should. So with that and with the previous situation of the TAN note, which Dr. Hahn mentioned, which means, our bond rating went down 3%, and the perception of the community also went down. I believe that it would be more prudent not to go with 3%, but to have a bottom of 5%. And the reason are many, not to duplicate exactly what was just said, but right now, if you look at the annual budget, and I know that, Ro, don't let me, I know you're very aware, and Susie Garcia, but right now we have so many different monitors that are happening or not happening. For example, 500 employees we are missing. So, Susie, you have a little bit more money because we don't have that instructional staff. In the face of a rising FTE, because we do have more students than we anticipated. So that's another variable. And I believe that was 88 million that we are seeing. So you have those variables, but then on the other side, as mentioned, we could have a hurricane and we could have other natural disasters, no earthquakes, but those things can occur. So when we lock in a percentile, I do believe for the perception, and this is in support Superintendent Van Ayers and the rest of us, the perception of each board member and yourself is fiscal responsibility and stability. So if we're asking for a millage and we're not showing that we are, we're not going to get desperate. 3% was a desperate move. That was a go-to. That's obscure. 5% to me, the low, is more, to me, and I'll speak as an individual board member, much more astute. And then having the 10% as the high for Romanier Johnson. So my only difficulty with this from changing it to 3% to a 5% is just that. So I think because of lessons learned, that, and I see you have a question, Member Vaughn. I believe it says 3%, but I'll check.
The current policy aligns with state law, and it's at 3%. The proposal would be to change the 3 to 10%.
Yeah, well, 10%. The bottom line is 10% then, right? That's our bottom?
No, that would be the proposed.
Yeah.
So there's no range right now. It's just 3% is what is here, and Dr. Hahn's proposing that the fund balance be at 10% instead of 3%.
Oh, well, then I agree. Yeah,
Okay, so you agree. Okay.
5%, because when you have that little bit of leeway, 10% may or may not occur. So, I mean, I'm with the 5%. That's what I guess the bottom line is. And then I don't want to go below 5%, but I think in reality, with all the variables, and I'm hoping Ms. Johnson will enumerate the variables. I think that we should be prudent. 5%, 10% may lock you into a point where you can't, you don't have much free lanes to negotiate. So that's my comfort level, and it comes from experience. So for what it's worth, as an individual board member, I recommend the 5%. And welcome comments.
Member Washington, you're next in the queue.
Thank you. You both have a great point, because we have to show our fiscal responsibility to the community, and that's very important. But I think one point we're leaving out. We're making suggestions and proposals, but we need to really hear from the chief finance officer, because is that feasible to do? So if we have an opportunity, when she has an opportunity, I'd like to hear from her on that. Okay? Thank you.
Got it.
So I tend to agree with Member Hahn. When we were in a very bad situation, I'm going to be honest, we've come from a $350 million deficit to, we've kind of tailored that down to being in the black right now. But we were under the microscope of the state and almost at a place of takeover. Am I right? When were we at the place of almost takeover?
In 2021.
So not long ago.
Right, 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And that was in the midst of a pandemic that hit us, and everything shut down, right? So not only were we in a place of takeover, but we were in a global situation. So at 10%, because we never know what we don't know, when things are going to just happen, when stuff is going to hit the fan, and we need to protect this county, our Hillsborough County Schools, and our employees, right? So that 10% would do what? What would that cover?
Well, I think the timing is correct. Like, I agree with Dr. Hahn. The timing is that this is the opportunity for the board to set policies. When I'm dealing with the bond ratings, they're looking at, the first thing they look at, stability in the fund balance. Another thing, in cash flow. I don't want to be in a position, 5% will put me in a position I might have to go out for a 10, and that's too close to call. I'd rather be in a position where there's comfort in the financials, and I'm using any money in the fund balance to make money for the district. I earn money. So I'm in a position that I can earn money. And cash flow, when I'm low, I got to make sure I pull enough out and be in a position to cover that. I don't want to be in a position where I'm deciding to go out for a 10 and not real quick. In the rates, I don't know what the rate's going to be because it costs the district money when you go borrow money from somewhere else. The ultimate is that we'll have flexibility to be a district this large needs flexibility to, if there is unforeseen things happen, then we need to be able to cover our payroll. If it's a hurricane or something happened to our facilities, we need to have cash available and ready to spend. If we get a major tort or a lawsuit against the district, we need to have money available and ready and prepared. Now, this policy is just to protect us. Hold me fiscal responsible, the superintendent fiscal responsible, in the board fiscally responsible. As she stated, 10% is somewhere in the range that of comfort of a district of this size, and just to have that comfortability. And it's your policy. The board has the right to set a policy and they could change it at their will. But right now, since we have money, it's a great time to set a policy that ensures stability. Now, if you decide that you want to reduce the policy, you could do that at a later date. But right now, it assures the district that we're in a position of comfort. Like other large districts of our size that's in Florida, their fund balance is kind of higher than ours. Some are and some not. Then they have critical things. 3% is the lowest, the state requirement. That's a state requirement. And that you can lose that money at any time. One major disaster, one major, negotiation that goes to allow for bad decisions made. Now we can use some of the fund balance for initiatives that we might have that we didn't decide to, do before. We can restrict the fund balance also. So I'm just saying it puts you in a good position of stability overall for the district.
Superintendent, we've had a couple of close calls with some hurricanes, right? More so than we have had in the past.
Right.
We've had some flooding recently in areas
Last
here.
night.
Yeah,
It was one.
We've had some flooding recently in areas of Tampa that we did not have in the past.
Right.
Am I correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, we had an issue. I mean, even last night, we had calls from Mr. Farkas at Gibsonton Elementary with some classrooms that were down from that flash flooding that occurred last night. So yeah, we are. So that just to piggyback off Ms. Johnson. So to be superintendent of the school district, to even think 3 and 5% fund balance makes me extremely nervous. The number that we look at for me as I look as being fiscally responsible is even that 12 to 15% number. So this policy that Dr. Hahn brings forward, I agree wholeheartedly, concur, holding us accountable to that 10%, knowing that a number that I strive for is with Ms. Johnson is a 12 to 15, as Dr. Hahn mentioned, up to that 17%. So 12 to 15 is a number that if we have a policy that's set at 10, where we as a district, as we run the operation of the school district, to end up in that 12 to 15% number. So I am in 100% support of this policy and holding us accountable to that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So this would be almost like an emergency fund, like a family would have at home, like an emergency fund that just in case something happens.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm next in queue. I'm a little bit confused because if we set it at 10%, saying that we can't go underneath it, and we're saying that based on the fact that, if there's an emergency, if we need to make payroll, a lot of the things that Dr. Hahn highlighted, and we have to use that money, does that mean we have to have an emergency meeting to change our own policy so that we don't violate our own policy?
Well, the district was in this situation before, and you was in violation of the policy. You was at, I think, 5%, and it was you was in violation of the policy. The policy is on paper to give stability to our financial outside of the district when they're looking at us. But when we violate their policy, it does have to be changed, but there's no emergency meeting to change the policy. You just have to address the policy when you have time. It's no such thing as emergency for a policy. We violate policies all the time, but it's your policies, right? It's the board's policy to hold us accountable.
And the other thing, if I could just add to what Ms. Johnson just said, she's correct. In the past, the board did violate its policy. And so I was really interested to hear what you had to say today about whether this is doable and whether we would constantly be in a situation of having to dip below that. But the other thing you have to keep in mind is the fund balance is somewhat fluid in the sense of it goes up and it goes down. And I think if it's if you set it at 10%, and throughout the year the average is 10%, I don't think we'd be in violation. I think the problem would be if we were consistently running at 5% and it's at 10%. Now that's where we were before, so we had to change the policy to 3% because that's just where the district was. But to your point, if we have the fund balance at 10% or it's at 11%, we have to dip down to 9% to deal with the situation, we'll get it back up. And I think that's on your shoulders to do that. And I think you know how to do it. And if we can't do it for whatever reason, we'll come back to the board and ask that the policy be amended. The critical thing about this today is your recommendation from your CFO and your superintendent that this is something they recommend, and it's also something that's doable, and it's not going to put us in a cash flow problem or any kind of other financial situation. Then it's up to you to decide whether you're comfortable with it or not. But you're basing this on not only Dr. Hahn's proposal, but the recommendation of your professional staff.
I appreciate that, because I'm going to be honest, just hearing it, I have some concerns, especially because we're talking about whether or not we're going to be able to pass the millage, and if something like that means we can't pass it, if we have to look at falling at a smaller fund balance or making sure that we have wiggle room to pay our employees. To me, making sure that we can pay our employees when we're talking about competing with other counties is going to be of top priority to me. So that's kind of my concern, is while I absolutely agree with Dr. Hahn, and I appreciate that we want to, build trust with the community, be good stewards, have this opportunity when we have a high fund balance to kind of preserve the amount of money. I'm also concerned that, what we've talked about, whether we run into a deficit when we talk about negotiations, and making sure that we're using the money that we have for education to invest in our district and education, and number one, pay our priorities. I would feel more comfortable talking about this after we know whether the millage is going to pass and what we're talking about when we're talking about extra funding. I understand that that's not the policy is being brought forward now, so I would tend to agree with Member Gray, where I would feel more comfortable in a 5 to 8% range than going all the way up to 10, kind of seeing where that is. If again something else happens in November and we want to revisit it and look at possibly raising that because we're a little more confident in the fact that we're going to have more revenue coming in, I would certainly be open to that. But just jumping up to 10%, knowing how quickly, depending on what things look like, makes me a little bit nervous. So that's just my personal thoughts on it. But I love to hear what other board members have to say, and there's a big queue. So the next one in queue is Member Rendon.
Good morning. Thank you, Member Vaughn. What is our current fund balance? What is the percentage of our current fund balance?
24%. We had $395 million.
So we already have an extensive amount of protection. So I think this is a really good time to be and put us in a position where that 10% is really at a good level in comparison to where we're at. So we've got flexibility now. And I think I also want to note right now at this point in time that when our fund balance is where it's at, and we do have things, the hurricanes are always at our forefront, and the flooding right now is kind of scary, considering the fact that we really haven't had an extensive amount of rain if we do have a tropical storm come through or a hurricane. So, and I know we have roads out in my area that are literally, the water is on the pavement waiting to just go over. So I do agree with that. But I think it's something that we need to make sure that we go on record to not only worry about the fund balance, that if we're going to make our fund balance the way it is, we do need to look department by department of where and which we're going to make sure we cover that, because Ms. Vaughn is 100% correct in the fact that we need to anticipate our needs of our employees next. Because whether or not the referendum passes or not, that doesn't change our salaries. It changes what we're able to give them as a exception to the salaries, but we do need to consider that their salaries need to continue to increase, whether or not the referendum does or does not pass. Excuse me. And so I do want to make sure we mention that even if we move our fund balance to 10%, we still have flexibility currently for that need. And we also have room that we can look continuously within our own departments of how we move and manage throughout the next part of the year to continuously have that as anticipation. So thank you. I think it's important to know that we are at 24%, which is quite large. And so 10% is definitely a healthy place to be. So I agree with Dr. Hahn on this one.
Thank you, Member Rendon. Member Combs?
I tend to agree with Member Vaughn and Member Gray, and I think maybe saying a 5 to 10%, and I will say why. A couple things is a lot of that funding came from ESSER funding. There were a lot of transfers. There was a lot of transferring of money that came through ESSER. So make no mistake, one of the reasons our fund balance is so huge is because of so much ESSER money that came through. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so that money is no longer going to be there. So we've been transferring that money for years, so that no longer is going to be there. Secondly, the reason the fund balance is so high is it's on the backs of our teachers because our class sizes are so high. And so our teachers are working in like class sizes that are much higher than they have in the past. And in the meantime, we have 500 vacancies. So one of the reasons the fund balance has increased so much is because of the teacher vacancy. So let's make no mistake about that. Also, I think when you have such a high fund balances, it limits what we can negotiate with our teachers. Suddenly we can't provide them the bonuses or we can't look at that. So I need to really think about what happens next year for teachers. That's great, we did great this year, but I have to think about next year. I have to not only think about the referendum, but I also have to be reminded every day that the state keeps starving us out and funding us 50th in the nation. Hillsborough County, Florida has the largest vacancies in the country. Hillsborough County has one of the largest vacancies in the state. And all of that is on the backs of teachers. So to increase the fund balance to that high, I think is a huge mistake. I would say 5 to 10% to be kind and say 5 to 10%, but I really want to make sure that money is also available. Also, if there's a crisis, that's great that we have that fund balance, but in addition to that, what about looking at possibly like insurance? If we were ever going to look at self-insurance or anything like that to save money, suddenly now we have all that money locked into the fund balance. So for me, I'm not going to lock myself out on that, and to make sure that, I would think if the fund balance looks great, I'd love to see a bonus or something for teachers who've had all these extra students in the classroom. So at the end of the day, for me, it really is about paying our teachers and making sure that we have the right climate and culture. By having such a fund balance is just we're keeping that money when people can barely survive today. So I am very, very much into the 5-10%, definitely not as high as 10%. Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you, Member Gray.
Yeah, I'll be the devil's advocate because looking at both sides of the spectrum, of course we want a nice, healthy fund balance. You'll feel better, you probably sleep better at night, but what's happening is it's at the risk and the cost of our teachers and our staff members. Because what you do is when you put a high fund balance, which is fine, 10%, your lack of flexibility to really do to do fair pay to the teachers leads us to a millage ask. So now we're going for a millage, and the reason is because the pay is just not affordable. Teachers are working 2 to 3 jobs. So when you lock in a 10%, what you're really saying is negotiations are going to have lack of flexibility. Teachers and staff, support personnel, they won't have that freedom to maybe gain more of the money that they so much deserve. So I believe the 5%, we've been through this before, is a better idea for many reasons. And by the way, Attorney Porter, you mentioned the main job is important to Ms. Romanier. Our main job as a board member is fiscal responsibility. That's our major job. So as a senior board member, seeing the ebb and flow, and now seeing a disastrous consequence of teachers not getting paid at all, and we're minus 500, and we're 50th in the nation, to me, I have to scratch my head and think, golly, is there anything better that we can do other than just hammer them and have a higher fund balance? Fund balance is very important. Dr. Hahn and myself, Member Perez, we all went through HE double hockey sticks with the low. 3% was low, we had to. In your tenure here, you didn't go through what we had gone through. So consequentially, Dr. Hahn brought up a fund balance policy to up it, which is absolutely logical. But what's not logical is telling our teachers that we have very little money left to pay them because we have to have a huge fund balance. And by the way, smile as you will, as Member Combs said, ESSER, I mean, we're in a very comfortable place. We are very, we are in a better place. Again, 500 employees less. So I would like to have the 500 employees come, get paid decently, and not lock ourselves too high. And the genesis is, and I'm hearing this over and over, we have the right to change it. So be it. So if we decide in another year to change it, then we shall. But again, we have an emergency here. It's a nationwide emergency. We are at a teacher shortage, and pay is the #1 item. So that's my remarks. And I would welcome what you have to say. But again, we need to make sure that we're paying attention to the biggest, largest amount of folks that determine the welfare mentally, physically, socially of our children, and that is our teachers, period, and ESP, extra support personnel, and bus drivers. Okay, that's enough for me.
If I could just a point of clarity, so the $395 million that Ms. Johnson noted, that was to close, and you'll get this at our public hearing next Thursday during our board meeting, that's to close out the 23-24 school year. We will have a presentation at the next Thursday's board meeting, which will look at 24-25. We were very aggressive in negotiations this past year. The number, the $395 million, that fund balance does not include all of the negotiations that were for the 24-25 school year. So I just want to make that very clear that we were very aggressive to make sure that we were settled with our unions. But the number $395 million, and jump in, Ms. Johnson, that does not include. That's not for the 24-25. That is closeout for 23-24 school year. Ms. Johnson, anything to add there? Or no?
No, that's correct.
Yeah. But again, we're 50th or 48th
Yes,
in the
ma'am.
state.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
the reality.
Yeah.
Thank you, Member Gray. Dr. Hahn?
Thank you, Member Vaughn. You talked about the millage and having to go out for a millage if we go to 10%, or, we've had to go out for a millage at 24%. So that didn't really make sense to me. I will say this, I've been very thoughtful about this. This was not a whim, and I've done a lot of research on this. And I can say that I certainly agree. We did a great job this year paying our teachers. I never want to get back to a position where we can only do a bonus. But I will say, when we talk about buffering against revenue shortfalls, I think we might, I want to just emphasize that. There's been a lot on emergencies. Yes, can help with emergencies, but there's such a bigger picture around this outside of a hurricane. We've talked many times about the shortfalls in state funding and the fluctuations in enrollment. The last thing we want to do is have to have our employees lose their jobs. Even with the 10%, that will leave you with what, 14% for raises and so forth that you all have been talking about, which is great. But we want to avoid disruptive cuts when we have leaner financial years. The other thing that I find a little taken aback with is that you would not want to listen to, the experts in the field around what a healthy fund balance should be for a district this size, between 18 and 17%. 8 and 17%, and actually sit here as board members and say, well, we know better, it should be 5% or 3%.
Or 10%.
At the very, very least, 10% was at least somewhere in the middle. But at the very least, why would you not? I'll agree with Member Vaughn and Member Combs and bring it to 8%. That's at least within what the best practice is. At least, at the very, very least, let's be within what best practice says and do the 8%. Happy to do that, and we can see how it goes. But, outside of just prepared emergencies, it's the cash flow issues, it's protecting our employees. So if something happens, we don't want to have to make those cuts. All of us on this board went through that with the last superintendent. That is painful. So I would say at the very least, I'm willing to compromise and say, let's align ourselves with best fiscal practices. Because none of us here are financial experts. So we have to look to those who do understand this landscape and let that inform how we're making these decisions so that we can bring stability and yet still continue to provide the raises that we need to for our employees. So I'm happy to support the 8% from my other board members, and I think that's a good compromise, and I think that it shows that we are, doing at least what's with the best practices financially. So that's where I stand. Thank you. I appreciate everybody's input.
Thank you, Dr. Hahn. Member. Ms. Johnson, did you have something you wanted to say?
I could support, I definitely could support 8% also. But the fund balance is one-time funding. I just want to communicate that. It's one time. I do not, as a CFO, would recommend giving raises that impacts off the fund balance. I'm trying to bring stability to the district. And yes, we did move ESSERS. ESSERS one-time funding to build that fund balance to the state it is. And I have been through the rough times with you guys because when I came in, I was faced with a deficit district, right? And we had to make some decisions that were maybe not favorable with everybody, but we decided to make some decisions that restructure another district. Now, there's a fiscal recovery plan that was part of it, too. We just didn't rely on ESSERS. I do know that we do really receive more money on the side, but we're not relying on vacancies because those vacancies are impacted by we have to still service kids. We have to have Kelly services and any other service, contracted services. That money is just not sitting there. We have ESE kids, they still need service. So we do use that money that you feel that's in that vacancies. When we can't hire individuals, we move it to contract service to service kids because our responsibility is to service kids. So that is not a large sum that we're utilizing. And my responsibility is to restructure the district when the size of the district and capacity. That fund balance gives us time to adjust, to make decisions based on, hey, we have money. We don't have to lay off people. Nobody lost their jobs. People were still getting paid at the time that we was unstable in our finances. So I can say that I'm looking forward to moving this district forward, and I do things based on a lot of things you guys don't see. It happens daily that we have to adjust quickly. And we have to be flexible, and that fund balance give us that flexibility. And it's one-time money. It's not for reoccurring salaries. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm next in queue, and then Member Washington, and then Member Rendon, just so you guys can be prepared. I'm glad you clarified that because it is a little confusing when we talk about the fund balance and salaries. I think the point when we talk about the fund balance and salaries, because we don't want to use that for reoccurring funds, is that that money can be used in lieu of things where we would take away from the general fund, leaving more flexibility to talk about negotiations. And that's what I'm talking about. So I want to be clear with that. Secondly, from previous conversations we've had, what I've clarified when we've talked about best practices when it comes to fund balances, from what you quoted me the last time we used these statistics, was that was nationwide. And as we all know, Florida is a different animal when it comes to funding and general fund balances when we talk about how we're being funded by the state. So while I appreciate talking about it in a way where we're looking at the entire nation when we're talking about fund balances, what's helpful for me in these conversations is to talk about Florida specifically. And I know when we have these conversations, I've asked for other counties that are our scope and size and what their fund balances and their policies are on that. Do you have that information pertinent to Florida?
Well, I do know some districts are as high as over 10%.
Are there districts that have villages or other funding sources?
They might have referendums. So I mean, I can't trust that they made that decision because they have a referendum.
No,
but-
I would just like to know if they do.
Yeah.
I'm not asking their mentality
Yes.
behind it, just the raw data
Yes,
of whether
some
or
of
not
them
they have
definitely
that.
they do have a
Okay.
referendum.
I appreciate those answers, and I appreciate Dr. Hahn's willingness to compromise and look at 8%. While it's still on the higher end, I'm comfortable moving forward with that to just kind of evaluate whether that's a good fit. I think what's important is that, again, it's flexible, that we can use it as needed, that we have the ability to change that. We're all open to, depending on what the next few years looks like, taking a look at that again. I'm comfortable moving forward with the 8%. And again, I appreciate Dr. Hahn willing to compromise on that. Moving forward, again, if we do have this discussion or we revisit it, I would like, again, the information that's pertinent to Florida, because I do feel like we're very different when it comes to other states and funding when we talk about education. So that's something I'd like to have. For most part, it seems like most people are amenable to definitely raising the fund balance in the policy if somehow. Now we just have to look at the percentage. After me, it's Member Washington, if you'd like to.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'd just like to say, we don't give people kudos when they sometime, but I want to thank you, Johnson, for doing a great job.
Thank you.
You've been doing a great job in that position, because you're right, when you came in, we were in a deep hole. And you made some severe cuts, but sometimes you have to do that. And we keep saying teachers. Let's remember, we're talking about all employees too, not only teachers. We're talking about all employees. So I would like to see I could deal with 8%. I think that would be feasible. You, Dr. Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, you're the chief.
Well
That's
done.
the chief. Okay, we're going to know what the chief said, because she knows more about finance than I do. I can tell you that. But yeah, I agree with the 8%. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Washington. Member Rendon?
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Question, we're talking a lot about the referendum here, but the referendum really has nothing to do with our fund balance at all, correct?
That is correct.
So whether or not we have a referendum or we don't, we still have to address staff salaries within the budget that we have. So I think it's critically important to make sure we again talk about the fact that we have to prioritize as a district staff salaries first. They should be the very first thing that's negotiated, should be the very first thing that's talked about, should be the very first budget that we do. If we're going to talk about students, if we're going to talk about teachers and our staff, it must be the first priority of this district. And so I think it's one thing that every member of this board will agree on, that our staff are the most important priority of this district. And in order to do that, we must make them the forefront of our conversation when it comes to all of our budgets. It cannot be the last budget we use. It must be the first thing we budget every single year. So I think that's important. And I also think it's important to recognize that the referendum and our fund balance have nothing to do with each other, because what our referendum will bring in will come into exactly what where that
Yes, correct.
language in the referendum is for. It has nothing to do with our fund balance. The fund balance is completely, like Dr. Hunt said, it's put aside, making sure that we are fiscally responsible and have that cushion for the needs of the district. And so, again, I'm more than happy to get on board with 8%. I want to make sure that we are in with the standards. And Member Vaughn, I completely agree with you. It's hard to understand when it comes to our state and different things. And we can't compare state by state, because we have other states that have state income tax, which then affect the pay of some of our state employees, including our teachers. So there are different differences within. But I think it does make a difference of how we run the district. That's important, and how we prioritize what we pay first. And so I think that's important, that we make sure that we accountable that, because it is important to every member of this board that our staff feel valued and that they are paid a livable wage. And we do have to get to that point. So we do have to make sure that our budget aligns with that. So thank you very much. I will be on board with 8%.
Thank you. Do you guys have what you need to move forward? It
No,
seems
we
like-
need to just some
Okay.
clarification. So
Okay.
we've been taking notes, and Ms. Davis, for purposes of advertising, needs to know you don't vote today, but we need to know if everyone's comfortable with the 8% that's being proposed, and if not, now's your time to speak up. So, okay. Okay, so we will move forward with a fund balance of 8%. Thank you. That's exactly what we needed. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to move to the ESE policy? Does everyone have their material? Okay. This is being brought by Member Chair Perez, And if you want to give a few introductory remarks, we'll turn it over to Dr. Whalen to go through the substance of the proposed policy. This is policy 2460. How would he have received that? So it's not part of your packet. So
yeah, we got the.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, she's got it. She's got it now. It's comfortable for me, so it's probably good for everyone else.
Okay, ready? All right. So, and we have a couple of parents in the audience that are here with their students that are ESC. But this is a policy that I've asked to be kind of revived because we've had a little of some issues with having ABA therapists in our schools and how that affects our students and the supports that they receive in the schools. Some concerns that the parents have had with the ABA therapists accessing our students in the schools and what that looks like for both the parents, the ABA therapists, and the students.
And I think Dr. Whalen and Ms. Brown can sort of elaborate on this policy.
So when Chair Perez had brought policy revision, we went to our ESC policy, and as you recall, we talked about that as well at the workshop on June the 25th that Ms. Brown and her team provided for the board members about our comprehensive services. So we have a comprehensive ESC policy, and we noticed in the statute, particularly statute 1003.572, which is the collaboration of public and private instructional personnel, it specifically speaks to applied behavior analysis services, but we did notice that the collaboration piece of that statute was missing from our policy. So we talked with Chair Perez regarding that. And so the revision that you see in front of you is the addition of that statutory language, which would be on lines 132 to 141. And I'm happy to read it if you wanted us to read it at all. But you can see that it aligns with the statute. And I do want to point out the point in there that it is to enhance, but not supplant, the school district's responsibilities under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. So that is the revision that you see here before you today.
When I sat down with the parents, there is some issues that they do have on line 134 and 135 and 150. So I'm going to address the line 134 and 135. The parents are concerned about this. The line that says the school, as the local education agency, shall provide therapy services to meet the expectations provided in federal law and regulations and state statutes and rules. The problem that they have with this is that the school does not have the resources, and the statute permits private therapy. The parent agrees private therapy should not supplant, but that the sentence makes it appear that the private therapy can't come in to support the student. Can we elaborate on that, please? The line 34 and 135.
Yeah, so where it's talking about the school as the local educational agency shall provide therapy services, that part of the statute is just saying the same thing as you can't, like, we still have to provide what's in the IEP. So the statute is saying, school district, you still have to provide all the services outlined in the IEP, even though the parents have the right to have their therapy and services at the school. So that's what the statute is saying. It's not like we have to do it, the therapy that they get privately. It's saying you still have to do what's owed to the student in the IEP.
And then also line 150, they're saying that it's very open-ended, that it's allowing an opening to input any other requirements that parents are not aware of. So there's no specificity defining the core classes, recess, or students' individual needs, being that each student is different with regard to time and place.
So line 150 where it says all other identified prereqs, is that what you're referring to? So identified in the district's procedures related to collaboration with private instructional personnel are completed and approved. So I believe what that is referring to is that when we have contractors come to our schools, they have to have the Jessica Lunsford badge, they have to have their licenses, all of those things. That's specifically what the statute is referring to there, that they have to have, they can't, we can't just let anybody come who hasn't been fingerprinted or doesn't have that license or certification in whatever they're providing the therapy in.
Okay. All right, I'll get back in the queue if I have any other questions.
Thank you, Chair Perez. Member Gray?
Thank you, Member Vaughn. I think just two things, three things. Ms. LaPrance, when I look at the language, it would seem to me, if I'm not mistaken, that this I'm identifying with 132 through 136. We're identifying with the private personnel statute, is that correct?
Yes, it's the language from the statute, yes.
And then the other part of that lends itself to an explanation or a more of a fathomable explanation, or is that part of the statute?
So the language from 110 all the way to 151 comes from the statute.
Okay. So having said that, leaving that alone, the other question I had was the inclusive. And I just talked with you, and if you can just perhaps share with the board what we're going to do with the word inclusive, which is as per Florida statute I mentioned last time in the workshop.
Yes, you did bring up the inclusive practices or the definition of inclusion. And so at the bottom on our policy in line number 254, we talk about 1003.57, and then in the actual statute, there are definitions that talk about the school district shall use the term inclusion and what it means. So we were thinking we would add that definition along with the definition for what does a special day school mean, what does a special class mean under least restrictive environment. So if you look at least restrictive environment, which is 153, at the end of that section, we could add those definitions to include inclusion.
Okay, I appreciate that. The other, and this is kudos to you, and I, well, at any rate, Romanier Johnson's not here. I wanted to thank her also for her great job, but I want to thank you right now since you're right here. What you did and shared with the board recently was something that I believe can be used by all divisions. You created a plan for the future, and what you're doing is on a Saturday, in Spanish as well, you're providing parents the outreach for questions and answers, because we can go from Florida statute to Florida statute and just be very, well, point blank boring. But what we really need to do is also be reflective of the needs of the community and the parents. And so, in part, what you're doing with this 12th annual Creating a Plan for the Future, you're giving an opportunity for those Q&A sessions. And I really appreciate the Hispanic outreach as well. So, Superintendent Van Ayers, I just want to say this is really showing great leadership and forward motion. So I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Rendon. Thank you, Member Gray. Member Rendon.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Thank you for putting this together, Member Chair Perez and Ms. LaPrance. It is a lot. You know, ESC is a large large berth. So putting it together, I do appreciate. And I do like the fact of being able to put those definitions into place. I think what I'd like to talk about beyond this, because this is just the policy, right? And so when we brought back the practices and the policies and procedures, this is what we're talking about taking this language and putting it into real life. Because like Member Gray said, the transition plan is phenomenal, but it's required by statute that we provide transition planning, and we provide that opportunity for families because it is part of our requirements as a district to make sure we're educating them in all aspects of that transition plan and things that are available to them throughout the district, as well as transition plans. So I love the fact that we do that and give opportunities for that, but it is part of statute and the requirements that we do have. So I think that's where I'd like to see there be more of a merge in our policies and procedures in this statute, because right now the way our policies and procedures look is they meet the requirements of the DOE questions. And so if we could merge a lot more of how does this really look on paper? How are we really implementing that in a school? And how are we really educating our individual teachers on what it looks to have an outside behavior analyst in their classroom? What does it really look like to have an outside speech therapist in our classroom? Because I think that's a little bit of an issue right now with our teachers, where they feel that it's intrusive, that it's hindering their educational, what they're doing in their classroom when we have outside people coming in to implement that, because we don't see the mesh. And so maybe we can adjust some of our policies and procedures to align with what we are encouraging as the statute and then our policies. I think that will be more helpful to have that more of an actual, how does that really look in our classroom? How does that really look in our district? And be able to both meet the standards of the DOE and what it looks like in our classroom. So I think that would be really important on this one. So thank you, and thank you for bringing this, because it does set a tone for our priorities as a district.
And we will be bringing back the PMPs with that information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rendon. Member Combs?
No, I didn't have any comments. I think this is really important, but I guess one of the questions that I have, and I think this is really, really critical, what does that look like, okay, when maybe the child is not thriving? The goal is always to have that child in the least restrictive environment and to be in the right classroom. So my question is, what happens when that child is really not thriving in that classroom, and even though they have that aid in the classroom, and also the teacher and also the administrator also feels like all as a group that maybe that child's not thriving, and maybe that it's also negatively impacting that classroom. So I sometimes wonder what that looks like. Is that something that you go on with the IEP, or what that looks like? Because I think sometimes, you know, I always want what's the least restrictive environment for a child. We always want children who are in the right environment, but sometimes maybe they're not in the right environment, even with the aid. And what does that look like when you sit down with the parent, with the administrator and the teacher, trying to see if they should be in a different setting, or what other accommodations are needed? Is that going in the IEP, and how does this interact with that?
So with or without a private instructional personnel, if a student is not making academic or behavioral growth or making progress, then it's the IEP team's responsibility to meet and discuss why that is, looking at the data. What else do we need to try? What interventions haven't we tried? We would, if it's behavioral, it would be related to a FBA PBIP, that functional behavior assessment, and you know, positive behavior support plan. If it's academics, then it would be, what are we doing to layer on academic interventions? So either way, with or without that private person in the room, it's the school's responsibility, and specifically the IEP team's responsibility, to come together and address the student's needs. So does that mean they need more intensive services? Does it mean they need more, a smaller group? What does that mean? And then if there is a private provider in the room, then that collaboration process would be very important, because whatever the private provider is doing outside of school, we should be, you know, working with them on a plan that can be generalized among other settings, right? So how does that student, when they leave us, go to a movie theater or go to the playground or go home? All those skills should be generalized. So that's one of the benefits of having those private providers, is that we can collaborate and hopefully come up with a plan that those skills can be generalized throughout their settings, not just at school.
And what about also, and I know you're doing a lot of workshops, maybe creating some kind of workshop on how to work with your private provider, what that looks like, you know, because I think that positive relationship is going to be really important from the beginning on how to navigate, you know, when you get your private provider, what does that look like in your classroom? How do you work alongside them? How do, you know, maybe we have, I don't know, a worksheet or something to be able to let people know that they're really there to support, because I think teachers sometimes feel like there's so much, right? And then they have additional work, and they have, which is all part of their job. But how do we make sure that's a positive, something positive, and make sure that there's a workshop or a collaboration on the checkoff list? Have you met your provider? And make sure that they're starting on the right together on the right pathway, because I think that's what happens. I think there's just been, this started from some misunderstanding, I think, and confusion on different levels, not feeling that support. So how do we make sure the parents feel like they're provider, make sure the provider feels like that way, the teacher feels provided, if we're all working together, because if we're all working together, then that child's going to be successful, right? So we want to make sure that we're all working on a positive environment. So when this comes out as a policy, let's make sure that when it actually goes out and we put it in the classroom, let's make sure that's a really positive experience for everyone. Because I think it's, you know, it's sad when parents are coming and they're feeling frustrated, and then teachers are feeling frustrated, and then and then you're feeling like people, you know, it's just so much negativity. At the end, we all want to do what's right for all children. So I think that's the most important thing out of this policy, and let's make sure however we implement it is very positive for everyone, and obviously the most important is for our special needs students.
So we have done some training for all principals around PIP and what that should look like. And the collaboration meeting really should be a collaborative effort between the school and the private provider. So that meeting between the principal, the public school teacher, the private school provider, and then whatever, like if it's behavior, then like oftentimes our BCBAs are part of that team, or district resource teacher in behavior, to talk about how that should be, how it should look in the room. So that collaboration meeting before anyone even goes into the classroom should happen so that everybody knows how to work together and what the plan is going forward. So, I mean, we did recently meet with some parents about some revisions to our procedure, such as having observations prior to that therapy happening. That is a reasonable request, so we are doing some of those. So we are making some tweaks to our procedure, which we will bring when we bring the PMPs to the board again. But that upfront meeting has got to happen so that everybody knows what the intent is, how it's going to be implemented, what is my job as the teacher, what is my job as the private provider, and that we're working together, like you said, to meet the needs of the kids.
And I think the hardest thing is the time factor, because kids don't have time, right? You're waiting and I know there's a backlog. So that is probably one of the biggest challenges that I think parents feel, is the amount of time. But I want to say, Dr. Lesperance, you've worked so hard since you've been in this position. There's been so many, our ESE needs are higher than ever, and our basically our vacancies are highest there. So I just want to thank you for all the work that you're doing, because I know you're working so hard for our most vulnerable students. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Combs. First of all, I just want to say we have 56 minutes left, and we've gotten through a policy and a half. And we have 7 more to go through. So I know we all want to speak about these, and these are things, especially board member policies, that we feel passionate about. But if we can get most of our comments done in one, so we don't go back through board members, we're never going to get through this. For me specifically, my question is centered around the reason why I think this policy is coming into play now is because there have been barriers placed in front of parents getting access to the ABA therapy and other therapies with private partnerships in our schools, to where the board has, whether it was the last meeting or voicing it now, want to make sure that we're eliminating as many barriers and giving as much access as possible. And after that meeting, I spoke with a family who's still having challenges. They've been working on trying to get ABA therapy since last year. They were offered it in host. Now the policy changes. They can't get it in host. There's still issues getting it in their school, and there's extreme amount of frustration. So my question is to the point. With this policy, the way it's worded and referencing the statutes, is it going to make sure going forward that the policies that Member Combs has talked about, that Member Rendon has talked about, are going to match
taking away as many of those barriers and providing as much access as possible for our family?
So I think some of the barriers were about getting the badges and the credentialing submitted. And so once that was approved, the specific case you're talking about, then we were able to move forward with getting the services. So the communication back and forth is really important. That's one of the reasons that we started, we put one person, Dr. Brown, in charge of reviewing all the cases, making sure that she's communicating back to the private providers and to the parents of where the barriers or breakdowns are. So if there's something missing, that they know, like we can contact the parent and say, you know, you have to have your provider has to have the Jessica Lunsford badge so that they can go back and get that handled. Since we've started the new procedure, the application that's online, so it goes right to Dr. Brown now, I do think when we work out some of those kinks that things will be much smoother, less time will go by. She's already processed 122 private providers are in our schools since we just started the new procedure. That does not include all of the other providers that are in our schools on the old procedure, because if parents filled out the old application, we did not deny them access. We let them go forward, use that application. Those were at the school level. So the principal was the one responsible for looking to see if they had a certification to make sure they had a badge. That was a lot on the school, a lot on the principal, so that's why we've kind of got one point person now to get it streamlined and quicker and communication out. So I do believe that we will have better communication now. We have 122 active through this procedure and many more from our old procedure that are in our classrooms right now. I mean, we have one school that has nine private providers in it right now.
So what I'm hearing is yes, I hope so. I just want, yes, it's going to.
But I can't say that if the provider does not provide their badge, they're not coming. I mean, we're not letting someone come without the Jessica Lunsford badge or not being certified. So if that particular case we were talking about, that was what you call the barrier. But that is a requirement.
Gotcha. So will this remove some other barriers that might be an issue?
Like what? What would be a barrier other than that? Like
having to get the PIP or with PIPs or ways that they do the applications or whichever. Is this, with this policy change, are we streamlining or doing anything that's going to offer better access to our families?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. Secondly, I just have it's really quick, off topic. With Synergy, have we had since the beginning of school 504s and IEPs accessible to teachers, or was there a barrier with Synergy with that?
So the barrier was that if the IEP was on the old system, that all teachers had access to current IEPs that were done in Synergy. But if it was an IEP that was done in EdConnect, an EFAD, they were archived over to Synergy, but for some reason the gen ed teachers could not see them. They have since corrected that. However, in the meantime, while we were waiting for them to do their IT magic, we had hard copies that were in the CUME folders that we could provide them, and it is our ESC case manager's responsibilities to provide all the gen ed teachers with what services their kids are supposed to be having, what accommodations. Like, that is a long time practice that we have had, that case managers were responsible for working with their gen ed partners on making sure teachers knew what kinds of accommodations and services kids needed. So in the meantime, while that was being fixed, we had a solution so people weren't out there not knowing what services kids should get or what accommodations.
Okay. I appreciate that answer that it's fixed, because I was having lots of concerns even at my own son's schools with accessing the IEPs that we needed.
And the ESC teachers had access so they could print it out and give it to them as well, but we obviously want them to have their own access.
Okay. I appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and support this policy based on that. One thing I would like to say, and then we'll move on to other speakers, is why I appreciate the centralization of one person kind of taking ownership of this. So from what I understand, it's reducing some of the burden off the school site specifically. I would like to keep open that one person. That's a lot of work for one person. So if we need more assistance with that, we look at expanding that team, because I notice in other cases when there's one person, if that backload becomes too much, if they take a vacation, if they're sick, we're looking at families who are then waiting even longer. So I want to make sure that we have enough people doing the work. I love the idea of removing it from the individual school, so that's less of a burden and it's more people who are familiar with it, so we can move it along quickly. But I just want to make sure there's enough people there, and we don't have to.
Well, and
running out of time.
there is all the compliance team members have access to the mailbox, so that when she needs help, if there's too many, they all pitch in, and when she's absent, they all take over. So there are several of them that have access to it.
Awesome, thank you. I appreciate it. Dr. Hahn, thank you.
Thank you. I'll make my comments brief. I appreciate the comments of my colleagues. They brought up some of the topics I had questions about and clarified some things for me. I also like the idea that it's centralized and taken off the backs of the schools. I think, in the past, and this is before your leadership and Ms. Brown's leadership in over ESC, there was a lot of concern from the therapist side that the goalpost was always moving. There wasn't this standard process in place to get approved. It sounds like we're kind of moved in that direction, whereas there's a very clear process to become an approved therapist in this regard. And that's really a lot of the concern I heard was that, I can't get my son's therapist approved. And then from the therapist side, well, we did this, we did that, but now they're saying we have to do X, Y, and Z. And so I'm glad to hear that that seems to be, changed, and that we've got this real clear process in what's needed. I'm certainly going to approve this. My hope is that when the process and procedures come forward, it aligns with this, and that we're seeing, as Member Vaughn and Member Perez and all my other colleagues on this board have said today, that, a lot of these barriers are broken down for families, because really the continuity of care is what's so important here. And yes, we can provide some of these services in schools through our own employees, but really, when you have a therapist working with a child at home and in school, there's just more continuity of growth and care, whether it's during the school year, summer, weekends, just time off from school. That's where, the gaps start to get wider, is when, we have different people serving children, and they miss that continuity in service. So, I think that's the most important thing. And I know we work very hard at making sure that we comply to all of the IEPs and IDEA. But I think most importantly is, many families in the ESC world, it's very stressful, it's very difficult to navigate. Many parents that I've worked with throughout my career, they feel like they've had to really fight every step of the way for every service they've received. And, I want us to be known as a real collaborator, and really removing the barriers and taking some of that stress away from our families. So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Member Perez, too, for bringing this forward. I appreciate your advocacy around this. It's been nonstop.
Thank you, Dr. Hahn. Member Rendon?
Thank you. Just a couple really quick things. One is I want to make sure we note that it's wonderful that we've got these therapists and different therapies coming into the schools to make sure the students are receiving those needed services. But this does not take the responsibility off of the teachers. And so I don't want anyone to think that just because there's a therapist in the classroom, the teacher doesn't have more. The therapist is only going to give teachers strategies to use in the classroom, but the work is still done by the teachers. And so it's very important to know that their work is continuing to be at the same level, if not higher than they were before, even with this extra support. It's just giving teachers better strategies, better ways in which they can address students, hopefully for the most success within classrooms. So I think that's really important to note, that even though we've got these coming in, it does not take off the responsibility of the teachers. They are still working as hard, if not harder, than they ever have before. But I do have a question, and I couldn't find it in statute, but I'm pretty sure I saw it when we were looking at the policies and procedures that when we have or identified a student that is either in need of an assessment or has been identified, that we have timeframes to address those things. That is not included in this policy, and I really wish we would have done that. Am I correct?
The timelines for evaluations.
Correct. We
do.
talk about evaluations, but we don't have it as part of our policy, and that really should be here.
And it is in the PMPs for the state. Like we, even this year, something new we had to add was a timeline for reevals, which we've never had before. So those are part of the PMPs, so I don't see why we couldn't add that
Yeah,
here.
I will only approve this if we put those timelines in, because that does show the commitment of this district that we have policies that identify when a student, because like Member Combs brought to this, the forefront, that what happens when a student is not in the right environment or the student is not at the right level. What is that? And so that should be our policy of how quickly we address it, how soon that needs to be done. And so, like I said, I believe it was in our PMP, but it should be in our policy of identifying that. So in order for me to approve this, I want those dates put in here that makes us accountable to our students.
Yeah, I think we could put it right under the multidisciplinary evaluation.
We don't need that. We will add it.
Add the dates of when those are going to occur. That would be great. Thank you. And that's all I had. I forgot to ask that originally.
Thank you, Member Rendon. Chair Perez?
Thank you. And really quick, the parents are still concerned about the form. You know that the new PIP being requiring the identification. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, form. Because these are adding barriers. You know, when it comes to the insurance requirements for the therapist. So we're trying to move ahead, but still we're 10 steps behind when it comes to those issues.
So I would defer to our attorney about those part of the procedure, because that, you know, that's where we get our guidance for those things.
Good morning. Thank you. Working with staff, we then, hearing your concerns, we went back and looked at all of the other large districts within the state, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, West Palm Beach, or Orange, and they all have similar requirements. It's something that we require on really on every, anytime a person comes onto our campus, we require that kind of protection both for us but also for them. And so that's the reason for that, and why we wanted to make sure that we weren't an outlier. And we're not.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Yep. Yes. Okay. Being mindful of the time, board members, we'll try to get through these policies. If not, Ms. Davis and I will come up with another date to get through them. The final one that's listed under board member policy was initially brought to the board by Member Perez several years ago. This is the apprentice policy, which puts mandates onto a percentage of the number of apprentices that need to be on any sort of large project. Mr. Farkas is here to give you some details. Since that policy has gone into effect, there have been a series of lawsuits that have rendered our policy out of compliance with state law. So what we're doing is recommending that we change the policy from a mandatory apprenticeship to a suggested or recommended apprenticeship. Hillsborough County and City of Tampa, who initially put these policies in place before we did, have also changed their policies. So this is pretty straightforward. It's just we need to align with state law. The major changes from making it mandatory to making it recommended. And Mr. Farkas can answer any questions, but honestly, there's not a lot of room for debate on this, given the state of the law.
All right, I do. Since I brought this forward, I do have a couple of things. The language wasn't changed by House Bill 705, but it does now apply to the projects with local money. It obviously is not a single source, but why the change if there isn't wording about apprenticeships, and who is going to make sure there is a good faith effort to show proof?
Good faith will be us in the project management. So giving an easy way to do that is to measure it. You inspect what you expect. So if we can make the CMs, the construction managers, report back to us what those percentages are and share that through each project. That's a good way to do it. As far as the law part of it,
there's not only the House bill, but there's also been litigation involved with that really renders the current language inappropriate. So that's sort of where that's coming from. It's a combination of both the House bill and the litigation. The final case was just actually came out of St. Pete last month. So this is all sort of new, but again, we feel pretty strongly that we have to change it.
Is there any way to put that on the suspended agenda so we could keep up with what we're seeing?
Sure.
Member Gray?
Thank you, Member Vaughn. My concern, and I understand mandated versus recommended, which lawsuits have been had, etc. But my problem would be with the verbiage. If we look at line 52, a bidder must certify that, and that was crossed out, is encouraged. And then we have line 74, the contractor is encouraged to demonstrate and document the good faith efforts. Then the problem comes with the inconsistency of the actual word encouraged when we go to line 88, where it says include a provision the contractor and its subcontractors to comply with the requirements of this policy. So you have encouraged, yet you have the strength of the word requires. I don't see the match. I would rather, and I'm open to Mr. Farkas, what you're suggesting, lawsuits, etc. But I would rather see the word will. This is back to 74. The contractor will demonstrate the document, and then on the other 52, a bidder will versus encouraged. That's one ask. If that is a no, recommended, by legals to say no, then we have to do something with line 88, because then you're saying the contractor and its subcontractors to comply with the requirements of this policy. So encourage, and then requirements just does not match. So my question is, shall we not change the word from encourage to will?
Well, I think that's the fundamental issue, because will implies that it's mandatory and encourage implies that it's not mandatory. So I think we have to keep encourage on the two lines that you mentioned. And if you go to line 88, if you read the whole sentence starting on line 87, it does have the word encourage. It says include a provision in the construction process encouraging the contractor and its contractors to comply with the requirements of the policy. So I think encourage needs to stay from a legal perspective, and I think if you read 87 and 88 together, it makes sense, but we'll be happy to take a look at lines 87 and 88 to see if they could be worded better. Happy to do that.
Now, let me just be clear from a legal perspective, but in fact, this has no teeth at all.
That's
Is that on
That's
purpose?
Correct. That's on purpose.
I understand.
Yes.
It's the law.
Yes.
So we're looking at a policy that really has no emphatic usage. So at any rate, I didn't go through the synonyms of encourage to find other words, but there, I will seek that. But I am not. It just doesn't seem to flow.
Okay, we'll be happy to look at the wording.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Gray. I'm next in queue. So while I appreciate being proactive about this, because the last thing we want to do, right, is get entangled in lawsuits. We've had a few recently. I am concerned that we're being a little too proactive and that public works funding isn't necessarily the same thing when it talks to, one, we're talking about apprenticeships, right? And I mean, the whole point of our apprenticeships, right, is that our apprentices go on to get get approved as state approved apprentices. And then why wouldn't we want to have a policy that encourages hiring those same students that we're preparing for life to make sure they can actually work and build on on our schools. I think that there has been some interpretation and that the judge actually ruled in the favor of the city at first and then came back. I'm not sure that that ruling makes me feel confident enough that our policy specifically violates state legislation. I'm also concerned at the fact that this is a further erosion of home rule. You know, we're consistently held accountable as a school district for the decisions that we make, but when we talk about our funding and even being able to hire the employees that we think to reinvest in our community, we get less and less autonomy when it comes to that. I think this actually violates, you know, home rule when it comes to creating an own policy of our workforce. I think it's problematic. I'm very concerned about it. I think it's the antithesis to what we talk about when we talk about consistent workforce development and how many students we have that aren't career or college bound necessarily. When we talk about giving them trades, we want to make sure that then we offer them good jobs to come back and build our district and in our schools and our community. And while I appreciate you being proactive against this, I don't agree that this automatically violates state law, and I'm not going to support the changes to this policy. Member Combs?
Thank you, Member Vaughn. I think we're being too presumptive. I think we're being too reactionary. I also don't think it's necessary. But if you really feel that we need to change to encourage to, then on line 87 and 88, I'd like to see how exactly are we going to document or look at those efforts. If you are going to change it to encouraging, then I want to see how are we going to measure that, because I think if we change that word to encouraging and then I don't see any follow-up on how I can measure that, then policy is not going to be existent. So I'm into either one or the other. I'm into remaining the policy as is, as Member Vaughn said, or if you, as our attorneys, think that we need to change it to encouraging, then I want to see how I'm going to be able to see that it's actually being measured. You know, so I want to see, are you going to monthly give us updates on projects? How was it bidded out? So if I go out to the unions, they've said, okay, we've had an opportunity. Our students are also had the opportunity of that. So for me, I've got to either make sure it remains this way, or we have some type of measurement on that. Because if not, then it's just a policy without any teeth. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Combs. Dr. Hahn?
It's fast. That's true. I'm sorry, I had to step out of the room, but can you just talk through the legal implications of leaving it the way it is versus
Sure.
making
So
these changes?
when the policy was originally enacted, it was modeled after ordinances by
Right.
Hillsborough County and City of Tampa. Since that time, there's been litigation and also House bills that would render the current policy potentially violative of both state law and at odds with the recent decision that came out of St. Petersburg. So it's a collective recommendation, both from legal and from the superintendent, Mr. Farkas, that it be changed to from a mandatory policy to one that encourages apprenticeships. I understand the conversation. There's a risk involved if you don't change it. That you can make any decision you like, but the risk is we get challenged by a lawsuit, and it's.
Yeah.
We will defend anything you do, but based on what I've just told you, it would be harder to defend that than it was when this was enacted.
Yeah, and look, I understand we've been through a couple lawsuits in the last couple of weeks, and nobody wants to go through that again if it can be avoided. I understand the concerns of my other board members, but I'm a little risk adverse right now. I think that the last thing we need is to get into another lawsuit and battle. I think that we need to align our policies with what we're seeing, and we often will say, well, the county's doing this and the city is doing that, and that's how we kind of got this to begin with. Is I think it was the city who
City of Tampa started off
right,
this,
and
Hillsborough
now
County
they've
followed.
reverted back to
Both the city and the county have
Yeah.
reverted to this.
So I don't think it's unreasonable to move this forward. So I will support Member Perez's policy today. Thank you.
Was there anyone else who wanted to get in the queue that didn't speak? I just have one additional question. If we were faced with a lawsuit, would it be just that the policy isn't legal and we'd have to change it? Or are there concerns about anything else with the lawsuit? What are your concerns? And from the other counties, what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I can provide the lawsuit that came out of St. Pete from that, but it would be challenging that the court in Pinellas County found that their policy or ordinance was unconstitutional. So it would just be ruled, and then we'd have to change it. The court would, yeah. Thank you. And board members understand there's a difference of opinion on this, we'll bring it forward to the public hearing, and you all can make a final decision there. But it's either stays the same or changes, so there's not much room to mitigate it. We'll look at lines 87 and 88 at your suggestion and clean that up. But then you can decide at the public hearing whether to support this or not. And I'll make the comments again on the record about what risk you're facing. And again, it's your decision. Always want to make it clear it's your decision. We'll defend anything you do, but it's my duty to advise you when there's a risk. And there's a risk. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Board members, we have 30 minutes to get through the next round of policies. And if we don't get through, board members, again, if we don't get through this, because we're on a policy cycle that's pretty on a regular basis, we can always move these to the next policy cycle if we have to, or have another workshop. Then I'll turn it over to Ms. Davis to go through the staff policies.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Porter. So we will go ahead and start our staff submitted policy requests. Most of them are updates based on statute changes and rulemaking, especially with DOE. So I will turn to Dr. Patton to highlight 1210 and policy 3210.
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, good afternoon. So we're covering policy 1210 for administration and 3210 for instructional based on standards of ethical conduct. The reason for these updates is to provide the context to the ethical standards by identifying the obligations, and the key word is obligations, to the student, public, and professional that the licensed professional educator in the state of Florida are expected to uphold. Under Rule 6A-10-81 Florida Administrative Code, the Principles of Professional Conduct for the Education Profession in Florida, that was revised in August of 2023. Right now, I would like to have Kelly King, who's my Executive Officer of Professional Standards, just walk through the changes and the updates that are to the policy, and then if there's additional questions, we'll be glad to entertain those.
Thank you, Dr. Patton. Good morning. As Dr. Patton said, for both policy 1210 and 3210, the changes are very minimal. It really provides context that as licensed educators, that both administrators and instructional staff do have an obligation to both the student as well as the public and to the community. And then there was one additional change that we noticed where there was an omission that was related to discrimination. And so that part that you see highlighted in the red was added as well in both policy 1210 and 3210. And in policy 1210, there was an omission on number 25 related to not using coercive means or promise of special treatment to influence professional judgment of colleagues.
Member Gray?
If we're ready, I just have one question, Ms. Kelly, and thank you for this work effort on line 70. Not use coercive means or promise special treatment to influence professional judgments of colleagues. So just to share with the spirit of the ESE topic, not use coercive means or promise special treatment. Should we not put a clause in there to include or not include the ESE children? Because the special treatment, and you know, I might be just reaching out and being very picky, but I'm just wanting to cover that population.
Well, and to your question, the first adjustment that we made, if you look at A, has to do with the obligation to the student that the professional has, and that would encompass all students, and that's taken directly from Rule 6A.
Okay, 6A? 6A.
Letter A at the top should be in red there. Obligation to the student.
Ms. King, it would be helpful if you could reference the line. I think that's what the board's used to as opposed to, so if you reference the lines.
Yes, line 8, if you're looking at policy 1210.
Line 8. Okay. Well, I'm not following. Not intent. I'm looking at line A, section A. Are you talking line 25 or?
Line 8.
Line 8.
Line 8.
Obligation to the student requires that the individual. So what we're saying is that
So that's where the part is referenced, that the ethical code of conduct covers the professional's obligation to all students, including ESE students.
Okay, so that's a understanding.
Right.
And you don't feel like we should make it a little bit more clearer with the ESE? Whoops.
I don't know that deriving from what the rule states would be necessary because it does encompass all of those students.
Okay, well, I'm seeing all these shaking yes heads. And again, I'm prefacing that with me being very picky. I just want to cover all the bases. So just reflect on that for just a second, and I'll do the same. Okay. I welcome board member comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gray. Member Combs?
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I think this is a great change. I really like the way it lays out. Finally, it's like obligation to student, obligation to the public, the obligation of the education. I just like the way it flows. I think it's just a really interesting way of looking at it, and I think it's important, and I think it gives every stakeholder an obligation, and I just think this is a great improvement for this policy. So that's all I was going to say. Thank you. I support it, and let's go on to the next policy, maybe.
Got it. Support it.
I agree. I like the changes a lot. I think they're good changes. And I think that's it for the next policy.
Thank you.
Okay. That
Great.
was easy.
All right. Thank you. So we'll move on to our next one, Policy 6110, Federal Funds. And we have our finance team coming back up. And I think Susan Garcia will go ahead and start us off with the highlight of the changes.
Good morning. This is a minor change, and we're just adding language to the federal funds policy. We're basically addressing maintenance of effort. Last fiscal year, we had a monitoring by FLDOE on one of our federal funds, and they addressed maintenance of effort. Maintenance of effort basically says we'll spend the same dollars, state and local dollars, that we spent in the previous year in educating our students. We did pass the maintenance of effort audit. However, we did not have a policy that addressed it, so we are adding that sentence to our federal funds policy. It did address that we would follow all federal statutes, but they specifically wanted us to talk about maintenance of effort.
So just to clear up the language, they want to make sure that if we change codes, whoever be here knows there's a maintenance of effort policy. That means based on the federal structure, we need to spend the same amount of dollars in the general fund, and we can't go below that range to educate kids. And that it's a matching principle with the federal policies.
Okay.
Okay, move on.
We're going to finish.
Thank you.
That was easy.
So we'll go ahead and move on. Ken Hart is going to join us, and maybe it looks like yes, and Dr. Houghton as well, Pansy Houghton, to highlight. We have three policies that are related, which are 8390, animals on district property, 8390.01, service animals on district property, and also 9160, public attendance at school events.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all. Thanks for allowing us to come in today. This revision, or proposed revision, really is a split between two existing policies. A couple of years ago, and still in place, we have policy 9360, which is service animals on campus. That's in place today. There's been some confusion at times about what is a service animal, what is an animal going into a classroom, can we bring an animal into a room, and so forth. And as a result of an OCR hearing 2 years ago, I believe, we were asked, and maybe we volunteered even, to split the two policies. One specifically dealing with service animals on campus, and the second, that's 9360.01, and the second one, 9360, which is the service animals on campus. So, or 8390, I'm sorry, 8390. So what you have in front of you is a proposal, and I'll go through the first one first. It's policy 8390, and it deals with animals on district property. This is where we bring, or may bring, an animal on campus to support our curriculum. And that is a very key word, or key words, because we don't want to compromise the agricultural programs at our high schools. They are part of our curriculum. They are there under the guidelines of the Board of Education, direction of the principal, and so forth. They do not, they are excluded from this policy because they're part of our curriculum. However, an animal that might want, or a teacher that might want to bring an animal on campus for emotional support or whatever, must meet certain criteria and indicate that the animal is performing a service directly related to support the activity or the curriculum of the class. For example, if a science teacher would like to bring an animal on to our property, that teacher would need to be held to indicate and show to us that the animal has a direct correlation to what's being taught. And if that is, for lack of a better word, proven, we grant approval. Now, there is a committee that makes that call, and that there are forms that are used, which will be revised after the policy, if indeed you do approve the new revision, that the principal will have. They need to meet certain criteria, provide us with certain information to make sure that the animal on campus directly supports either the activity or the curriculum. That's the policy 9360. The policy 8390.01 is service animals. And service animals are really part of the federal law. There are very strict criteria that are applied to an individual who wants to have an animal on campus supporting his or her disability. And of course, it has to be a disability that meets the criteria. And we also review that as well. But for the most part, if a request is made to have an animal on campus to be a service animal, which, by the way, is not a pet ever, the criteria are pretty clear. We cannot ask the individual what the disability is, but we can ask what service the dog of the animal, in most cases dog, provides, and how does it relate to the disability. If those criteria are met, obviously we agree, we approve, but the dog or animal must still meet certain criteria to make sure that it's healthy, that it's cared for. I mean, it must meet all of the requirements for coming from a veterinarian, current on its shots and rabies and so forth. So we feel that the division of the two policies will make it less confusing and more clear when we deal with a service animal request or just an animal on campus request. The committee that is in place, and I would go back one minute, for a service animal request made by a faculty member, Danielle Shotwell generally handles those because they deal with the contract and vendors, of course. For service animal requests that come from a student, those come to a committee that I happen to chair, consisting of an ESE component, several principals, the principal of the school who may be involved, and we review all the criteria, and we make sure that everything is clean and good to go. We're trying to protect our kids. Obviously, animals on campus can be an issue with regard to infestation of fleas, communication of disease, obviously biting. Those are all very big concerns of ours that we have, and while we certainly want to support everyone in having an animal on campus and a service animal on campus, we want it to be done correctly and consistently. Prior to the adoption of this policy, hopefully, the principal made the decision to allow an animal on campus, the principal was a focal point for service animals. With all due respect to principals, they have far more on their plate to worry about a service animal or an animal on campus. So we include them as they facilitate gathering information, but the committee is the group that makes the final call. And the third policy, as Ms. Davis said, was just a word change dealing with a guide dog changing over to a service animal. So I'd be happy to answer whatever questions you might have. We believe that this will clarify how we can bring animals on our school campus safely to promote the safety of our kids and our faculty and our staff. Thank you.
Thank you. I got right in the queue for this because I want some clarification. First of all, if I'm understanding 8390 correctly, let me just say I am absolutely against this. I think disassociating the emotional effects that animals have in the classroom, especially for our ESE kids who respond extremely well to animals in the classroom, is problematic. I think class pets are a great way of teaching so many different responsibilities and taking care of the animal, and part of what you'll see in Montessori-style programs, which we all know I'm a huge fan of. So I think limiting the access, especially when we talk about dogs and canines that come into our school, or many other programs that allow students who need emotional support from animals or find that or that connection when they don't necessarily have that relationships, is a problem, and I will vote against this policy with everything I have. So that's for the first one. The second one, I think I'd need a little more understanding. Like, I see a lot of redlining here, and I don't necessarily mind strengthening what it looks like for service animals, like you said, to make sure that they have their vaccinations or that they're approved. When we're talking about larger animals that are going to be with a student or an employee all day long, I think making sure that, you know, they're safe to be in our schools is a good movement. Again, I would have to really understand this policy a little bit more and like to talk about it more, since we're kind of rushing through it in a workshop. So I don't know if I have a chance to do that if it comes before us at the dais. And then the last one is just like you said, it's just a language change, so
Yes,
I don't
ma'am.
have any issues with that one. But again, you know, having to tie the fact of access to animals in our classrooms only to being curriculum based, I absolutely disagree with that. And I find it disappointing that we would even, as a district, look to make that turn to shy away from the advantages of emotional support that animals provide in the classroom. So those are just my thoughts on that. But I'll allow my other board members to speak. There's a lot of them in the queue. So Dr. Hahn, you're next.
So I feel like I just popped up. So I want to kind of piggyback to clarify some things around animals in the classroom. So could I, as a teacher, if I had a classroom pet, tie it to social emotional health and learning? Because that is part of our classroom curriculum. I mean, so this doesn't say you can't have a class pet. What it says is you have to tie the pet to an aspect of learning. And then, you know, and I mean, I think there's a lot of support probably even within our curriculum for that. So how would that, I guess you can't tell me if it would pass or not, your committee, but have you had teachers come through the committee who have made that case?
Up to this point, we have not had a committee.
Oh.
So that's what the policy is calling for, the creation of such a committee to allow for input from the teachers. One component that I didn't mention was the addition of a content specialist to help us, me particularly, understand what the connection would be to a curriculum, you know, how it would apply. And we've had a bunch of situations where we have permitted animals on campus because they're tied into the curriculum. We just want to make sure that they're there according to the existing and the new policies.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with pieces of this where, you know, that there needs to be documentation of health certificate, you know, precautions even to protect the health and safety of students and other staff. there needs to be some kind of plan, right? Like who's going to care for this pet during weekends, vacations, summer break? And I don't think sometimes that is really well thought through, to be honest. I've been a part of that in my own children's classrooms where, you know, people are panicking. Oh, I can't do it. The teacher can't take care of it. They're going away for Christmas break or spring break. And now everyone's kind of scrambling. And then just, you know, obviously, you know, I mean, we know there are some health concerns with certain pets, turtles, for example, right? They carry a lot of bacteria. You wouldn't really want them in a classroom, you know, though I know that has been the case in the past in my own personal experience. Not so, you know, I think there is a case to be made, but I do think it's important, you know, and I'm seeing this even at the college level in, you know, where students are being allowed to bring pets into their dorms without any consideration for, you know, other students' allergies or, you know, so asthma, like, you know, and then it's up to, well, then you have to move the student out of the classroom and disrupt the student. So I don't want to ever get to that point where, you know, a student is having to be moved out of a classroom because everyone else is attached to the classroom pet. And it's easier to move one student than disrupt. But so I do think there does need to be some real procedures and parameters around classroom pets. And I mostly see this in elementary school, not so much in middle and high school. But, you know, I do think you could, under these conditions, make a case for a classroom pet around the social, emotional, mental health aspect, because we do have curriculum in place around social, emotional, mental health that it could be tied to. So, but I would be interested to see kind of the process for your committee, and you know, I mean, you never know how this is all going to play out until it plays out, right? I mean,
well, there's a lot of notification that comes from the school to the classroom, for example, because we don't want to risk someone with a known allergy to an animal.
What's the current process for a class pet? Just out of curiosity.
It generally runs
Is there
through
a formalized process?
It runs through the principal. Yeah. There are forms that can be, are completed, but it generally runs through the principal. And with all due respect to everyone, not everyone has manageable pets that are brought into our classes, into our schools. We're looking to make it consistently safe by guaranteeing or assuring, getting assurances that all animals are properly vaccinated, they're housebroken, they're trained, and so forth. Yeah. So that's what our hope is. There are emotional situations. One of the persons sitting on a committee is the principal of Gaither, Tommy Morrill. He had a situation where absolutely the animal helped the young lady in distress. That was approved.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's.
There's not a hard line.
It is.
It is no classrooms
yes.
and pets, but there does need to be some type of procedure to protect the greater amount, you know, the greater good, so to speak. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hahn. Member Endon?
Thank you. You know, I'll be honest, I'm somewhere in between, you know, Member Vaughn and Dr. Hahn. What concerned me about this in a couple different ways is, one, you talked about the committee and the review process, yet there's no dates, there's no timeframes, there's no, I mean, y'all could drag it out for 12 months and it's going to be over and no things. So I would like to see some specifics in here. I would like to see some guidelines in there. The other thing that concerns me even more is that you deem this policy specifically for service animals only, and you actually eliminate emotional support animals and say they're not considered service animals. So that concerns me. Second, because I just had a meeting with Plant City Police Department, and they are actually bringing in an animal so that when they interview students that have gone through traumatic events, they're going to be bringing an animal with them. And according to this policy, we've eliminated that. So that's why I have a big problem with this policy, because we're eliminating options that we're not seeing. I am all for with Dr. Hahn on having guidelines to making sure pets are kept healthy. They have vaccinations. We make sure they're safe. All of those things are smart things for pet owners that we could continue. But I look at these policy right now as barriers to enhance our student engagement. And so I think we have to revise both of these to make them, and a lot of the red is getting very confusing when you go from eliminating one to the other and which one. And I had to go back and look and reread the whole emotional learning because I was like, wait a minute, that says that social emotional is not a service animal. So because you've eliminated from the first policy, now you've said the second policy, it doesn't count as a service animal. You've completely eliminated that from our classrooms. So I don't really care for these policies as they stand.
We're following the guidelines of the law, which basically say it defines and says very, very clearly to use a service animal as a crime deterrent or emotional support is not considered a service animal.
Well, with all due respect, it's the law of the definition of service animal. It's not the law that restricts our schools from having them. So we have the ability to have pets in our schools for emotional, social support. We have the ability to have them just as classroom management and classroom pets. The law doesn't stop that. The law you're referring to is only the definition of service animal, and you are choosing that for our policy. So as it stands right now, I will vote no on this.
So, board member, if I may interject, I mean, it's 11:56. There's a lot of conversation around these. Is the consensus of the board that you want to continue talking about these, or do you think they're not ripe to take forward at this point and need more work by staff? Or what would be your guidance at this point? Okay.
If you don't mind, two things happened. Because of an OCR case, and we have a kid that we denied bringing a service animal, that's why we had the case, right? And so the policies were together and they were convoluted. So we asked permission from OCR, and they were fine because we kept going back and forth. This is from 2022 is when the case, right? So we're here. So I'm in a conundrum for the district. 8390.01 is actually what is approved by OCR, and it's just service animal, and it's the federal law, it's in the guidelines. The one thing they said our policy wasn't right, we were hindering, and it was a barrier for kids. They had us rewrite this with their lawyers. It was a 2-year process, and we had principals on our committee, and then that's why we separated, because the original policy principals had the authority, and they didn't have the knowledge base to make the decision. So now it's a committee, and they said we should never have one person make a decision. So I hear you loud and clear, but I'm asking if we can bring forth 8390.01, separate that from the first policy, because it's completely different, if you don't mind, because one is about how we handle service animals. The other one, emotional support and everything, that's completely different. Yes, you add that to the other one.
This one eliminates that.
Yes.
So I want to make sure we've got another policy.
Yes, ma'am.
To add that.
Yeah. Correct.
Because this first policy did not add that.
Correct. All we did as part of the case to satisfy OCR was to split service animal, follow the federal regs so that we are in compliance as a district. They don't care about the other policy. Tag, that's yours. Because it doesn't, we're okay, it's not aligned with federal regs. Yes.
But by putting this in place, we're going to, if we don't have both of them come together, we're going to have a policy that eliminates emotional support and just other kinds of animals if you don't bring both policies at the same time. Because you clearly state.
No, because the other one's still in effect.
Yeah, whether we change this or not, it's in effect, and it's.
Right. Oh, I got it. The line items aren't in effect.
Yes.
I apologize. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Houghton. So what I'm hearing, so 8390.01, we would move that one forward,
Yes, please.
and we'll go back on that first one, and we'll go back as a team and kind of review those, and then bring that at a later date.
Yeah, because there's another piece to the case that we need to finish, is this training. So, because once we approve, then we send it back, they say yes,
That's
and then
ridiculous,
we have another
but
part
that's
of
the
the
point.
complaint to finish.
Can we at least add time frame though in this
What do you mean?
Because right now, on here, like I had just asked about time frame,
Yes,
right
ma'am.
now, when we talk about going to the committee,
Oh,
there
yes.
are no time frames. Like I said, the committee could take 12 months if they want, according to the
Yes.
policy.
Tell me what you want. Yes. Yes. Give us a.
No, whatever your committee is. I just want to make
We
sure
can-
we have
Okay.
the time frame.
So I think procedurally, we can come up with a time frame on our end of what that would be.
Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, and we don't have them that often. I'm saying within 2 weeks we can have a decision. It's it's really pretty simple, and we can do it through teams to get most of it.
Because that keeps kids out of school, so we want to make sure we.
Well, never is a kid out of school, because we've had kids, but they just need to bring them in. So I'm saying within
Some
2 weeks.
procedures.
Seems reasonable.
Okay.
So can I clarify that we would then be moving forward with the service animal 1 and 9160, the name change, and then
Yes, ma'am.
the 8390 will come back?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Is everybody amenable to that?
Yes, I think so.
Perfect.
Very good.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look at them, they've all been
Permit us
waiting
to
for that.
finish the threat management one, the last one?
I will.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Is everyone comfortable staying for the threat
Thank you.
management?
Yes.
9160.
Mr. Keller is ready, and he will be quick. Okay, so we'll go ahead and touch on our last policy here, 8415, threat management.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me today. So this is an update to Board Policy 8415, threat management. As you remember, last school year, we did quite a major overhaul of this policy as the new Florida model went into effect statewide. So each district is consistent with implementation of threat management. This is a small addition to that the state is requiring districts to do. If you see the last line of the policy, talking about districts and schools providing guidance to all staff and all students on what are concerning behaviors and how to report those, who are trusted adults. Luckily in Hillsborough County, we have for many years been training students and staff at the schools on warning signs concerning behaviors and who to report those to. So we're ahead of the game like we are in many things, I think, with safety and prevention. This year, we've updated our Act Now presentations to include all grades, K through 12. We're also including charter schools in those. Of course, they're age-appropriate, teaching students what are concerning behaviors, who are trusted adults at the school to report those to. And this is a great thing because, let's see.
Thank you.
As we know, the biggest protective factor for our students is having at least one trusted adult that they can go to. So this will have our schools early on in the school year identify who those folks are at the schools, make students and staff feel comfortable going to those people. So we're excited. We think this does bolster an already strong policy that we have, working closely with Chief Newman and the security part of it. And equally important is the preventative, proactive side, and our mental health team helps lead the way with that.
Thank you, Member Gray.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Thank you, Mr. Kellner and Ms. Saya. My first remark is you've done a magnificent job as a team and as the school safety specialist. Wonderful job, comprehensive. My question is line 61, where we identify mental health services may include school-based counseling or coordination with our contracted community-based mental health providers. Well, one of the lines I would recommend to add is trauma-based teaching, and I'll tell you why. 69% of our students have had trauma, be it hunger, eyesight, and I don't have to tell you domestic violence, human trafficking, bullying. So I would recommend perhaps putting that in there because that's an official. The National Dropout Prevention Center has that. We have trauma-based teaching within our purview on various curricula, as you know, and that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gray. Member Endon?
Yeah, just really quickly, and this is what I need clarification on and what you think about this. We've got very good clearing throughout this policy on exactly what it means for the threat management team, who they go to if they believe there's a threat, who they need to go to identify. We actually walked into several schools over the first 2 days and saw many of those trainings being done in the course of the first 3 days of school, which was just by coincidence, but showed that they're taking it very seriously. But one of the things that and again, this may be a hole that I'm just not familiar with, when a threat is provided and you go and you provide that threat, one of the holes is what happens to the person that's like, where's the safety of, if somebody is threatening you there, do we have a procedure of what happens with that person? Do we remove them from the classroom? It doesn't seem to be as clear across the districts. And if the threat is made, the recent thing that I had a situation was the threat was made and they said they were going to harm the student, it was a student to student, harm the student outside of school. But then they remained in the class together for at least that school day. And so, because they were identified as that wasn't a threat at school, but yet could it have been? And so I kind of feel like there was that gap in procedure of what happens to the parties at the same time. And is there something very clear that our schools do, or do they individually figure that out?
So it is on a case-by-case basis, but safety is always number one. So when we teach our teams, if there's ever a safety issue, we want to make sure we get to the root of that and make sure, number one, that all students involved are safe. As part of these assessments, and we look at concerning behaviors too, so we try to even back it up before there's actually a threat made, there's plans that can go into place. And we always say, put that safety plan into place for all individuals involved in that. And those are spelled out through a process called a Student Support Management Plan.
Correct.
Which is part of the Florida model. So depending on that level of concern and safety, they can implement that plan pretty much right away. They should implement it right away. And we always talk about all parties affected by that should be taken care of.
So my recommendation, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the policy, but we definitely need it in the procedures. I think we need a standard because that was where parents were very concerned, like, okay, so Patty Rendon feels a threat from Shake Washington. So Patty Rendon reports it to the right person. The right person then meets. Well, I'm just like, it works out better to have like know what we're doing. Because if I say A, B, and C, we get all clustered and confused. So at the end of the day, I think because where I got the issue is the parents like, it's been 2 hours and my son just texted me to come pick him up because he's still sitting in a class with that person and I've not been notified. And so I think we just should come up with some kind of clear procedure of what the expectation is, whatever the staff feel, but that way if I'm a parent and there was a threat, I know I'm going to be called, or I know that's going to be eliminated from the student. And right now we're just not, we're very clear on who to go to. We're very clear on what the team looks like. We're very clear on what the team's responsibilities are, but it's that beginning little process that I think we have some gap by school. And I think if we could come up with a consistency, it'd be better off for all of the expectations across the district.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No other comments about that? All right. Madam Chair, can I take a point of privilege very quickly as we wrap up? Thank you for your patience. I just want to say to Marlene Sokol, who is retiring and has been the reporter covering school board for so long, thank you so much for everything that you've done.
Yay.
That we're going to miss your voice, and we wish you the best of luck in whatever's in the future for you. And to welcome Ian, right? Ian's going to be covering issues now. So thank you so much for allowing me that point of privilege, Madam Chair.
My pleasure. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.